There is this company called SurgeHQ.ai, and they put ChatGPT and Google against 500 search queries, and this is the result that they've got. They've got human evaluators who preferred ChatGPT 42% of the time and Google 40% of the time. This doesn't say anything statistically significant, but it shows that ChatGPT could be a real threat for Google, as a lot of people have been speculating. I'm not here to give you the decision, but I would like to take you through this report and then say what are the instances where ChatGPT were preferred better than Google and what are the instances where Google was doing better than ChatGPT. Even though this is not a fair comparison, given that ChatGPT is not connected to Google and Google is not a large language model that is designed to give you the summary of the result, but this is the preference of human evaluators. Let's start with a very simple question about why are we even talking about ChatGPT versus Google. Internet is full of questions around whether ChatGPT is a Google killer, and a lot of people have been speculating that OpenAI's partnership with Microsoft and the way they are approaching large language models in the age of artificial intelligence in 2022 could be a real threat to Google for the first time ever since Google dethroned Yahoo, Alta Vista and all those search engines. So what ChatGPT is really good at is it can take your command or take your query and then give a very good distilled answer. For example, take this search query as an example. It says recursively delete .py files in a folder and its subfolder. Like, as a human, I understand exactly what they want. I know that there is a folder and there are some subfolders inside it, and we want to recursively delete .py files with an extension of .py files. And this is the Google's response, and you can see that Google's first answer is not a perfect answer, and as you go down in the search engine page you can see that it is getting better at it. But what if you ask the same question to ChatGPT, the same question, how do I recursively delete all the .py files in a folder and its subfolder? And you can see that you are getting a single bash command that is quite good for you to use on your terminal or shell, and it has also given you the explanation of why that bash command has been given. And you can also customize the response from ChatGPT, whatever the bash command it has given, with newer tasks. And this is again so perfect, which is not quite possible with Google search. You can start a fresh search from Google, but you cannot customize, or you cannot take the existing result and then give a feedback to Google and then customize it. I mean, of course, search engine is not designed for that, unlike a conversational AI bot. But this is again another important aspect why people are celebrating ChatGPT's responses. Now the problem is ChatGPT and Google are not the same. So when this company SurgeHQ.ai wanted to do a comparison of ChatGPT and Google, so they had understood certain limitation, and this is how they understood. They took 100 human beings to get their search result, and they extracted their 5 most recent informational queries, and they had to make sure that this is pre-2022 because ChatGPT does not have access after 2022, because of course everybody knows it's a large language model, does not have recent access to the internet or does not have recent data. And the next thing is the same search query has been put on Google and also put on ChatGPT, and finally they rated the performance of Google and ChatGPT's responses, and they also gave explanation about how they felt about the responses. And the result is quite surprising. Like, I would say that ChatGPT was preferred 42% of the time and Google was preferred 40% of the time. Nobody expected this to happen, even though there is a lot of speculation on the internet that Google has got a real threat in the first time in many years, that ChatGPT could be a real threat. Like, I didn't expect that 42% of the time that people would have preferred, the human beings would have preferred ChatGPT, which is quite surprising. So now you might ask the question is like, what are the nature of questions that people were asking on ChatGPT and Google, and what are those instances where they preferred ChatGPT, or what are the instances where they preferred Google? So now if you see that specifically, you can see that for coding queries, like programming related queries, like if you are an engineer, if you are a computer programmer, people who are using Google and ChatGPT for coding, programming related questions preferred ChatGPT over 70% of the time, while they preferred Google only 18% of the time. A huge difference between ChatGPT and Google. Like, I can tell from my own experience that ChatGPT is quite good at programming related question, but Google is good. Of course, it can give you summary on the top right hand side bar. It can give you Stack Overflow result, but it is no match to ChatGPT when it comes to coding question. And the good thing with coding question is, unlike medical advice, you don't have to believe it the moment you see it. You can take the code snippet, you can run it on your editor, and then you can see whether it works or not. Then you can customize your search. So for me, ChatGPT is a complete win, like a radical win when it comes to programming related question. And that is exactly what I see in this SurgeHQ.ai response as well. But now let's take a quick look at what are the instances where Google did well while ChatGPT did not do well, because we all know where ChatGPT does well. So I want to show you where ChatGPT did not do well and Google was preferred by the human evaluators. One, the query is, how do you search for tweets from a specific date on Twitter? This is the question. Google had a much better response because Google could search help.twitter.com and then give a quick summary there, while ChatGPT had a very verbose response which is not as precise as Google. The problem with ChatGPT, again, one of the most reoccurring problem with ChatGPT is the response was inaccurate. So you can see that the ChatGPT response, when you read it on English, it might look that it is so perfect that you may not even doubt the response, but of course it is inaccurate. You cannot go to like home page and click more options because there is no such thing as more option. The next place where ChatGPT failed is the query, how do you cite a book in MLA format? And as usual, ChatGPT is quite confident in giving the response, but the response is of course wrong because there are some inaccuracies. And finally, what kind of dog is a Brian Griffin, which is a fictional character from the series Family Guy, and ChatGPT again had a response, but Google's response was much better than the way ChatGPT had given. And finally, you can see that when you have questions related to real world entities like which ETF has historically offered higher ROI, especially like finance or medical related advice, Google is performing much better than ChatGPT because ChatGPT says that it cannot answer in this kind of responses. So overall, what are the final summary that we have got when we put or when they put ChatGPT versus Google? One, in short, ChatGPT is quite good at synthesizing a very large information, multiple information, and then giving a single coherent story for you so that you can solve the problem. This is quite good for programming related question. I don't have to go through 5 or 6 Stack Overflow answers to come up with one solution. ChatGPT can give me one solution. Even though if ChatGPT does not give a right solution, I can customize it. ChatGPT's interface is quite minimal. Like, you don't have to go over multiple pages. And finally, for complex queries where you have multiple entities involved, ChatGPT is quite good. Like, for example, the largest active volcano in the mainland of the US should exclude volcanoes in Hawaii. So when you give queries like this, ChatGPT is quite good, but of course they are quite bad in many things. The biggest problems that we have multiple times discussed on this channel, and I've got a separate video about is ChatGPT hallucinations. The problem is when ChatGPT is wrong, you cannot say they are wrong until you have subject matter expertise about it. If you are asking a medical advice, ChatGPT can give you a medical advice. You might trust the medical advice, or you might trust anything that comes out of ChatGPT as a fact. But as a matter of fact, ChatGPT is prone for hallucination like any large language model, and it is also known for its inaccuracies. And again, ChatGPT is quite verbose, which means it's text. It does not have images, videos, or any other rich content that is available with the internet. And finally, I would say that ChatGPT is not connected to the internet, which means, for example, if I want to know the local restaurant around my place, which is something that I still prefer Google to, like, I primarily use DuckDuckGo, but even sometimes I prefer Google because I like hyper local results. For example, I would like to know what is the best hotel in my city where I can get biryani. That is not something that I can get from DuckDuckGo. That is not something that I can get from ChatGPT. Google is the only place where I can get it. So of course, connection to the internet, the localized or personalized services are something that Google really does very well and much better than ChatGPT. But my primary concern with ChatGPT is the first reason that they have mentioned, which is hallucination and inaccuracy, and the inability of humans to actually flag it unless they have subject matter expertise. But overall, this is a wonderful result that ChatGPT is actually putting a good fight against Google. Like, it's not like ChatGPT like is nowhere near to Google. In fact, what we see is ChatGPT is quite closer to Google's answers, and this resonates with a lot of people who have been regularly using ChatGPT. But as a programmer, for me, the much bigger impact is for programming questions. ChatGPT is completely off the chart when it comes to Google, and this is a place where Google has to do real work. In fact, like, I prefer DuckDuckGo a lot of times for programming related questions. I stopped using Google for programming related questions quite a long time ago. So looks like ChatGPT is a real threat to Google when it comes to programming or coding related questions. I would like to know what you feel about this result. This result from SurgeHQ.ai will be linked in the YouTube description. Go through it. Let me know your thoughts about what do you feel about ChatGPT, Google, and all the speculations around ChatGPT being a real threat to Google. And if you have any other comments, let me know in the comment section. Otherwise, I hope this video was helpful to you, and see you in another video. Happy prompting.